At lunchtime in Boston, a steel tank began making sounds like machine gun fire. Then its walls tore apart, and roughly 2.3 million gallons of molasses crossed the street faster than a person could run. 21 people died in a substance remembered from moving slowly. But the strangest part isn't how the molasses moved. It's how long the tank had been warning everyone. A spoonful of molasses crawls because the spoon is small. Put millions of gallons behind a wall 50 feet high, and gravity gets a much larger vote. When that wall disappeared on January 15, 1919, the liquid didn't politely pour. It became a dense current, carrying steel, wood, carts, and broken pieces of Boston with it. Contemporary accounts estimated the front at around 35 miles per hour. That number wasn't measured by a speed camera, so treat it as an estimate. But the wreckage makes the important point. The first surge was fast enough to damage the elevated railway, shove buildings from their foundations, and overwhelm people before the word molasses sounded dangerous. Then the liquid changed again. Molasses is denser than water, and its viscosity changes dramatically with temperature. The initial mass could race forward under gravity, but the winter air cooled it as it spread through streets and debris. What arrived quickly became thicker around boots, wreckage, animals, rescuers, and anyone trying to move. That explains why the flood was physically brutal. It does not explain why the tank broke. The tank had been built in 1915, while wartime demand made industrial alcohol valuable. Molasses could be fermented and distilled into alcohol for manufacturing and munitions, so storage capacity meant money. The construction moved quickly. Massachusetts state history records that the tank was not completely filled with water for a full test before the first shipment needed somewhere to go. Soon, the neighborhood noticed something the paperwork had missed. The tank leaked. Molasses appeared along its seams. Children reportedly collected the drips in pails. Residents heard the structure groan when it was filled, and workers dealt with the visible leaks without removing the deeper danger. A warning repeated often enough can stop feeling like a warning. It becomes scenery. The tank kept receiving shipments. Its steel shell expanded and contracted through Boston weather while the liquid level rose and fell inside. Later structural analysis found walls that were too thin and steel vulnerable to cracking. Engineering work also identified intense stress around rivet holes near the manhole, exactly where a small weakness could become a tearing path. No single dramatic villain had to kick the wall. The system was already storing pressure inside known uncertainty. In the days before the collapse, a fresh shipment added more molasses. The weather also warmed sharply from deep winter cold. Those conditions may have changed pressure and stress inside the tank, but they were not magic forces attacking a sound structure. They were ordinary operating conditions, meeting a structure that had never earned the confidence placed in it. Shortly after midday, the metal began to fail. Rivets and plates released in a rapid sequence, producing the sharp cracking witnesses remembered. The tank opened, the weight moved, and the neighborhood had seconds. The wave struck a crowded part of the north end. Homes, workshops, freight cars, and sections of the elevated structure were damaged. Rescuers entered a landscape where every step fought back. 21 people were killed, and roughly 150 were injured. The phrase "Great Molasses Flood" can sound like a dark joke until the people enter the picture. Then the sweetness becomes part of the horror. The thing that made the story memorable also made the danger easy to underestimate before it happened. Afterward, the tank's owner, United States Industrial Alcohol, offered a different explanation. This was the era of real anarchist bombings, and the company argued that sabotage had destroyed the tank. That theory moved responsibility away from thin steel, missing tests, and years of leaks. It also turned an immigrant neighborhood's catastrophe into a story about an invisible attacker. The claim was not absurd merely because it was convenient. Bombings had occurred, and investigators had to take the possibility seriously. But a possibility is not the same as evidence. More than 100 civil claims were consolidated into a huge proceeding. A court-appointed auditor heard years of testimony about construction, metallurgy, pressure, rivets, witnesses, and the sabotage defense. In 1925, the finding placed responsibility on the tank's owner. The bomb theory did not survive the weight of the structural record. Later engineering analysis has sharpened that conclusion. The steel was inadequate for the stresses involved, important details were dangerously loaded, and the tank had advertised trouble through leakage long before it opened. Temperature helped shape the timing and the flow. It did not erase the decisions that made those conditions lethal. The case became part of a larger shift in construction accountability. Plans increasingly needed calculations, professional signatures, inspection, and an engineer willing to place a name beside the structure. The lesson was not that experts can prevent every failure. It was that scale requires proof, and responsibility cannot begin after the wall falls. Now return to the first image, a child holding a pail beneath a leaking tank. Before the disaster, the drip looked like free sweetness. Afterward, it looks like evidence. That reversal reaches beyond one Boston street. Most of us live beside systems we did not design: buildings, workplaces, platforms, vehicles, institutions. We learn which noises are normal, which cracks are cosmetic, and which complaints everyone has stopped hearing. Familiarity can make a warning feel smaller without making the danger smaller. Disasters rarely begin when the wall breaks. They begin when the leak becomes normal.